You know that feeling when the phone rings and, instead of rushing to answer, your first thought is to just let it ring out. Or when you hear a knock at the door and your whole body freezes, almost wishing the person would just walk away. You're not the only one. And no, it doesn't mean you've suddenly turned into a grouchy recluse. What it really means is, you're getting older. And with age comes something hardly anyone talks about, that quiet, creeping desire to be left alone more often. But here's the part no one tells you, this feeling isn't strange at all. In fact, it's normal. Maybe even healthy. And today, we're going to explore the real reasons why. So if this message already feels like it speaks to something deep inside you, don't let this be the last time we share a moment like this. Hit that subscribe button and join this little corner of peace we're building, a place with no noise, no pressure, just real talk and soul-deep stories. There comes a point in life, often so quietly that you don't even notice it at first, when the way you move through the world begins to change. It doesn't happen overnight like a sudden switch, but rather like a soft tide pulling back from the shore, slow and steady, until one day you realize you're standing in a different place than before. You start noticing it in little ways. The phone rings, and instead of feeling eager to answer, you let it go, telling yourself you'll call back later, even if you never do. A knock at the door once felt like a chance to welcome someone in, but now it stirs hesitation, and you almost hope they walk away before you have to get up. These small shifts are easy to dismiss, but together they reveal something much deeper. It's not that you dislike people, or that you've suddenly become antisocial, it's that your relationship with the world has changed. When you were younger, life was full of noise and connection. You were surrounded by people at school, at work, in your family, in your neighborhood. Conversation came easily, energy felt endless, and being around others was almost second nature. But as the years pass, you begin to feel the weight of it all. The endless small talk, the repeated dramas, the constant need to be available, it starts to wear you down in ways you never expected. You catch yourself thinking more often, do I really need this, or is this worth my time? And for the first time, you begin choosing silence instead of chatter, peace instead of obligation. At first, it might confuse you, maybe even scare you, because it feels so different from how you used to be. But slowly, you realize it's not wrong, it's natural. It's your soul adjusting, realigning, craving something deeper than noise and busyness. The shift feels strange because society tells us we should always be social, always connected, always surrounded. But deep down, you know that isn't true. Deep down, you sense that this desire for solitude, this urge to step back, isn't loneliness, it's clarity. It's the awareness that your energy is not infinite, that your heart and mind deserve rest, that your time is precious. And once you see it, once you truly notice the shift, you can't unsee it. You start protecting your quiet moments like they're sacred. You begin valuing the people who truly matter instead of trying to please everyone. And instead of feeling empty when you're alone, you begin to feel full of peace, full of your own thoughts, full of a deeper connection to yourself. That moment, when you finally realize what's happening, is not a moment of loss, it's a moment of awakening. It's the first step into a stage of life where solitude is not your enemy, but your friend. One of the first things you notice as you grow older is that your patience for nonsense begins to fade away, almost like sand slipping through your fingers. In your younger days, you had the energy to put up with things that drained you. You sat through conversations that didn't interest you, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, listened to people go on and on about themselves without ever pausing to ask about you. You stayed in friendships that gave you little in return, tolerated gossip, endured unnecessary arguments, and nodded along to opinions that never really made sense. Back then, you told yourself it was normal, that it was part of being polite, part of keeping the peace, part of belonging. But with time, something inside you begins to change. You realize that your energy is not endless, and that every time you give it to something meaningless, you lose a little bit of yourself. Slowly, your tolerance for drama, fake smiles, and shallow connections starts to shrink, and your soul whispers, no more. You stop laughing at things that don't bring you joy. You stop pretending to agree just to avoid conflict. You stop entertaining people who only take from you but never give. At first, it feels unusual to say no, to walk away, to cut short conversations that used to drag on endlessly. But the more you do it, the lighter you feel. It's not about becoming bitter or unkind, it's about finally honoring your own heart. You begin to see life differently, realizing that time is too short to spend with people who don't value your presence. You start to choose carefully where your attention goes, and you no longer feel guilty for stepping back from relationships or situations that leave you drained. This shrinking tolerance is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that peace matters more than pretense, that authenticity matters more than approval, that silence is better than noise that doesn't feed your soul. And as your tolerance for nonsense disappears, you discover something powerful. You don't need to carry everyone else's baggage to prove your worth. You don't need to exhaust yourself trying to fix people who don't want to change. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. The beauty of aging is that you finally give yourself permission to step out of the games and live honestly. It is like turning off background noise you never realized was so loud, and suddenly, the quiet feels like freedom. The people who truly love you will stay, not because you bend over backwards to please them, but because they value the real you. And the ones who fall away, they were never meant to stay. That's the gift of this stage of life. You no longer waste yourself on what doesn't matter. You save your energy for what does. As the years go by, something inside you begins to shift, quietly at first, then more noticeably with time. Your priorities start moving toward peace. When you were young, it felt important to keep your calendar full, to say yes to every invitation, to be liked, to be included, to be seen as someone who was always available. You chased approval without even realizing it, and you often stretched yourself thin trying to please everyone, even at the cost of your own well-being. But life has a way of teaching you lessons, and one of the most powerful lessons age brings is the realization that not every voice deserves your attention, not every gathering deserves your presence, and not every relationship deserves your energy. You start asking yourself deeper questions. Who actually makes me feel good when I talk to them? Who drains me? Do I leave this conversation feeling lighter or heavier? These questions become your quiet guide, and slowly you begin to shift away from chasing popularity and instead toward chasing peace. You realize you don't need a room full of people clapping for you, you just need a few souls who truly understand you. You stop craving surface-level conversations where everyone talks but nobody listens, and instead you long for depth, for those rare talks that touch your heart, that make you think, that remind you of who you really are. And if those conversations aren't available, you'd rather sit in silence with yourself than waste your time forcing words that don't matter. It's not selfishness, it's wisdom. It's knowing that your time, your energy, your spirit, are treasures, and they should only be shared where they're honored. The older you get, the more you understand that peace is not something you stumble upon. It's something you must actively choose, again and again. You choose it when you walk away from arguments that go nowhere. You choose it when you decline invitations that don't feel right. You choose it when you set boundaries with people who take too much and give too little. And each time you choose it, you feel stronger, freer, more like yourself. Society often tells us that busyness equals importance, but you begin to see through that illusion. A life packed with noise and activity isn't always a life well lived. Sometimes the fullest life is the quietest one, the one with space to breathe, to rest, to reflect, to enjoy simple moments without pressure. That's the gift of this shift. You stop living to impress, and you start living to feel. And in that feeling, you find a richness that no crowd, no party, no applause could ever give you. Peace becomes the goal, not because you've given up, but because you've finally grown wise enough to see that peace is where the real joy lives. As you move through life, one of the deepest changes you experience is the way grief reshapes your world, making it feel smaller with every loss. When you are young, your world feels wide and endless, filled with friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, and countless familiar faces. There's always someone to call, somewhere to go, and people waiting for you on the other side of the door. But as the years pass, that wide circle begins to shrink. Friends move away, loved ones pass on, relationships fade, and the laughter that once filled your days grows quieter. Each loss takes a little piece of your world with it, and though you may not notice it at first, slowly the space around you feels less crowded. And here's the part most people don't admit: sometimes you don't have the energy or desire to rebuild what has been lost. You carry the memories of those who are gone, and in carrying them, you begin to protect your heart by keeping your circle small. It's not depression. It's not giving up. It's a quiet acknowledgement of reality. Life is finite, and so is your time and energy. When grief touches you, it changes the way you see connection. You no longer crave a dozen casual friends; instead, you long for the few who truly matter, the ones who make you feel safe, seen, and understood. You realize that love isn't about numbers, it's about depth. And in the quiet of your home, you might find yourself choosing memories over new faces, because those memories are filled with warmth that no small talk can ever replace. Grief teaches you that not every empty space needs to be filled, and not every silence is loneliness. Sometimes silence is respect, for those who are gone, and for the parts of yourself that are still healing. People around you may encourage you to get out more or make new friends, but they don't always understand that your heart is full in a different way. It's full of the people you loved, the people you lost, and the lessons they left behind. And so, you guard your time more carefully. You don't waste it in places that feel empty. You don't chase after crowds that cannot give you what you've already known. Instead, you allow your world to be smaller, but richer, filled with meaning instead of noise. Grief has this strange way of sharpening your vision. It shows you what really matters. It makes you treasure the people who still remain in your life, because you know how fragile time truly is. And it makes you treasure yourself, because you understand that life is too short to spend in the wrong places. So yes, grief makes your world smaller, but in that smaller world, you often find a deeper kind of love, one that doesn't need many words or many people, just honesty, presence, and peace. As the years pass, you begin to realize something that no one really warned you about: social fatigue is real, and it runs deeper than just feeling a little tired after spending time with people. It's not the kind of tiredness you can fix with a nap or a good night's sleep. It's a deeper weariness, the kind that sits in your bones and lingers in your mind long after the conversation is over. When you're younger, you can bounce from one gathering to another, juggling conversations, managing different personalities, and recovering quickly, almost without thinking about it. But with age, that constant interaction begins to feel heavy, like carrying a bag that keeps getting fuller with every year. A simple lunch that once felt refreshing can now drain your energy for the rest of the day. A family gathering with overlapping conversations, laughter, and noise, once exciting, can now feel like running a marathon inside your own head. It doesn't mean you don't love the people around you, it just means your body and mind have limits, and you've started listening to them. You learn that peace is not found in doing everything, but in choosing what feels right. That's why you stop saying yes to every invitation, not because you've lost interest in people, but because you've learned to protect your energy like it's something sacred. And in truth, it is. Each time you spend hours forcing smiles, nodding politely, or listening to endless chatter, you pay a price in energy, and as you age, you no longer have the same reserves to spend. Instead of pouring yourself into every interaction, you start being selective. You choose moments that bring joy, people who make you feel understood, conversations that leave you feeling lighter instead of heavier. Some people may see this as withdrawal, but really, it's wisdom. It's knowing that your time and strength are precious, and they should not be wasted on noise that doesn't feed your soul. Social fatigue teaches you to say no without guilt, to decline without apology, and to prioritize rest over obligation. It teaches you that sitting quietly with a book, or simply sipping tea while listening to the birds, can be more fulfilling than hours of small talk that leaves you empty. It reminds you that you're no longer here to prove anything, no longer here to please everyone, but to live in alignment with what feels true to you. And when you honor that truth, when you let yourself step away from the exhausting demands of constant socializing, you find a new kind of strength, the strength of choosing yourself, of protecting your peace, of valuing your energy as much as you value your time. That is the hidden gift of social fatigue. It doesn't just tire you out, it teaches you what really matters. With time and experience, something powerful begins to take shape inside you, self-awareness, and it becomes more than just a tool, it becomes a shield that quietly protects you from the noise of the world. When you were younger, you might have questioned yourself constantly, doubted your worth, or sought validation from others to feel secure. Every opinion, every piece of judgment, every careless remark had the power to shake you, to make you wonder if you were enough. But as the years roll on, life itself becomes the greatest teacher, and you start seeing yourself more clearly than ever before. You know your strengths, you recognize your flaws, and instead of hiding them, you accept them as part of who you are. That acceptance is like armor, you stop fearing criticism because you've already made peace with the person you see in the mirror. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or closed off, it simply means you know yourself so well that the outside world can no longer define you. The compliments don't inflate you, and the insults don't crush you, because you've built a solid ground inside where your worth is rooted. Self-awareness gives you the wisdom to understand your triggers, to recognize when a situation isn't healthy, and to step back without guilt. It shields you from toxic people, from draining environments, from battles that aren't worth fighting. It whispers to you that not every argument needs a response, not every conflict deserves your energy, and not every negative voice deserves space in your mind. Instead of wasting your strength trying to please everyone, you start honoring your truth and setting quiet boundaries that guard your peace. You realize that real confidence isn't loud, it's calm. It doesn't come from proving yourself to the world, but from knowing who you are, deeply and honestly. And when storms of life come, as they always do, your self-awareness becomes your anchor, keeping you steady when everything else tries to shake you. You no longer look outside for direction, you look within, and there you find clarity, courage, and resilience. This shield doesn't just protect you, it frees you. It frees you from the need to compare, from the constant hunger for approval, from the exhausting chase to be understood by everyone. With self-awareness, you begin to live lighter, because you carry no mask, no false image, just yourself, raw and real. And in that authenticity, there is peace. It may have taken years to reach this place, but once you do, you realize it is one of the greatest gifts life could ever give, the unshakable knowledge of who you are, and the strength to walk your path with dignity, no matter what the world says or does. There comes a point in life when you suddenly realize how truly precious time is, and it's almost ironic, because by the time you begin to deeply value it, much of it has already passed. When you are young, time feels endless, like a river that will never dry. You spend hours, days, even years without giving it a second thought, assuming you have forever to do the things you dream of, to spend with the people you love, to create the life you want. But as the years stack up, you start to notice the changes, the faces around the table grow fewer, your body doesn't recover as fast as it once did, and your days feel shorter, slipping away almost too quickly to catch. That's when time begins to reveal its true nature, not as an unlimited gift, but as a fragile treasure that must be honored. The irony is painful yet beautiful, you only begin to understand its worth when much of it is already behind you. Suddenly, you no longer waste it on meaningless arguments, shallow pursuits, or people who drain your spirit. You start choosing differently, because you know every choice costs you a piece of your limited time. A walk with someone you love feels more valuable than 100 hours of empty conversations. A quiet evening spent in peace feels richer than years spent chasing approval. You look back and wish you had understood this sooner, but you also carry a gentle gratitude that at least you understand it now. The awareness makes every sunrise feel like a gift, every laugh like a blessing, every small moment like a piece of eternity you don't want to miss. You learn to say no more often, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom, because you know every yes is an investment of your most precious currency, time. The beautiful irony is that when you stop chasing time, when you stop trying to hold on to it with frantic hands, you actually begin to live more fully in it. You stop rushing to the next thing and instead savor the moment in front of you. You find joy in small details you once overlooked, the warmth of tea in your hands, the sound of rain tapping against the window, the way someone smiles when they feel truly seen. And in those moments, you realize that while time is fleeting, it is also abundant in its own way, because every second you choose to live with awareness becomes an eternity of meaning. That is the gift of realizing time's true value. It doesn't just make you mourn what is gone, it teaches you to cherish what is here, right now, in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this day that you will never get back again.